Today's topic we're going to be learning is Bava Batra Daf Lamed Bet. We're going to get started with a quick review of where we ended yesterday's daf. So we had a case where Rav Nachman wanted to rule that since first he allowed someone to possess the land based on their testimony, and the other side didn't have testimony. Then the other side brought testimony to basically cancel out the testimony of the first person, and Rav Nachman wanted to kick the person off the land and say, "Listen, I can't give it to either one of you because neither one has a definitive claim." But there were some rabbis who argued against him and said, "Isn't this going to look bad for the court? Because you're basically undoing what the court did. And then people are going to say, oh, what's the court? If the court can just undo their ruling, we're not going to really trust the court next time they rule." So Rav Nachman was convinced based on a Batra that they brought where they showed, you really can't do that. And then he anyway went ahead and did it. And then the Gemara says, well, how did he do it? And they answered, because he was relying on tight, strong ropes, okay? Ashle Rav Rav. This comes up in a bunch of different sugyot. If he was relying on important people, then he could do it. So while it's true, the Batra went against what he was trying to do, but he had someone else to hold on to. That's why they say a rope, because usually hold on to a rope. So now we wanted to see who are these Ashle Rav Rav that he was relying on. And to do that, they bring a Mishnah about Chezka Kahuna, about someone who we want to claim as a kosher Kohen, but he doesn't have enough witnesses. He only has one witness. So Rabbi Yehuda said, we don't use one witness. To which Rabbi Elazar said, well, we don't use one witness when there's two people, or there's Orurin, there's people complaining that this person's not a Kohen. People are saying, oh, we don't think it's a Kohen, or we think it's a Kohen who, his father married a divorcee, and he therefore is called a halal. But if there's no one complaining, then for sure one witness is sufficient, according to Rabbi Elazar. And Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, who quotes that Rabbi Shimon, the son of the Skan, who was Rabbi Chanina, the Skan of the Kohanim, says we can do it al pi ed echad. So the Gemara said they seem to be saying exactly the same thing, to which they answer, there were two lines from the bottom of Lamed Aleph, Lamed Bet at the bottom. Maybe their disagreement is if one person came to say this person's not a good Kohen. And then Rabbi Elazar, who seems to be the more stringent, and as if we're going to have to say one is stricter over the other, it seems to be Rabbi Elazar. He holds chad, Rashbag Savar trey. He says even if one person claims the person's not a Kohen, then we need two witnesses. But if no one's complaining, then we could do it based on one witness. And Rashbag said, no, only if there's two people do we need one witness. We can accept one witness. In other words, when there's one person, we don't even accept it at all. It's nothing. And of course, one witness is good. If there's two witnesses, then we're going to need two to counter the two witnesses. But you can't really say that, because then you have Rabbi Elazar saying if one person came and claimed this person wasn't a good Kohen, then we don't accept one witness to basically say he is. We need two witnesses. But Rabbi Yochanan says everybody agrees there's no such thing as somebody knocking somebody out. Someone saying that's not good, you're not valid Kohen, when there's only one witness. That's nothing. It's meaningless. So it can't possibly be that's the machlok. Ela ira trey. It must be two people came and said you're not a Kohen. And still there's a debate between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, and let's see what it is. Hacha b'mayaskin. And here we're going to get into a very much more complicated case than we saw previously. We start off, we're going to have a number of different stages. Stage one, we have a chazaka that the father's a Kohen. We know the father's a Kohen. No one has any reason to think there's anything wrong with the father's kahuna. V'nafik alei kala. But then there's a rumor. We didn't see a rumor before. There's a rumor de ben grusha ben chalutzahu. There's a rumor going around that this Kohen is the son of a Kohen who was married to a divorcee, or a woman who was did chalitza, who had to do yibum, and the brother did chalitza instead of yibum, which we treat like a ben grusha in terms of the Kohen not being allowed to marry. And then this child was born from that union, which means this child is not a valid Kohen. V'achtine, and then they lowered him from being a Kohen, meaning they said right now, and most of the commentaries say, and there's a lot of debates today about different things we're going to see. But most of the commentaries say what it means here is they just said until we clarify. They didn't say this wasn't a ruling of the court. This was just the court saying, listen, until we clarify and have clarity that you're really a good Kohen, you're not going to do any of the Kohen jobs. But then the next thing we have, okay, so stage one, we have a chazaka. Father's a Kohen, everything's good. Next stage, we start to hear rumors that the mother was divorced or chalitzat. Then we have one witness who comes and says, oh, no, I know this guy's a kosher Kohen. Okay, askine, they put him back to be a Kohen. They pick him up, meaning they lift him back up his status. He's now back to being a Kohen. Okay, everything's good. Now come in two witnesses. This is the Shiur that we were talking about. Now come Orim, two witnesses, and say, hey, their mother was divorced, and this guy's mother was divorced. He's not a good Kohen. Now we have two witnesses. At that point, achtine, we put him back down and we say, okay, now you're definitely, and here comes in the court ruling that we're going to question whether we can override it or not. This court ruling now says, okay, after we had chazaka, you were good, rumor, you were bad, one witness, you were good, two witnesses, you're bad. Now one witness comes and says, oh no, he's a Kohen. He's a good Kohen. So now let's do the math. Okay, forget the rumor, right? The chazaka doesn't really help us right now. Well, we'll get to the chazaka. It really does. We start with the chazaka. Then we get a rumor. Well, the rumors really doesn't matter because at this point we have witnesses. One witness who said it's good. Two said bad. And another one that said good. Well, let's put the one and one together. The one before and the one after, the two witnesses came and said he was bad. Those two say he's a good Kohen. The other two say he's a bad Kohen. Two knock out two. What are you left with? Chazaka. Because the rumor is really nothing. You're left with the chazaka of the father, which means the good Kohen. So, dekule alma mitzarfin age. The way we're going to understand the machloka right now, everybody agrees that the two witnesses, even though they came separately and were separated by a different kind of testimony in the middle, you could still join them together. That's not a problem. What's the machloket? Their whole machloket is, though, if the court already ruled after the two witnesses came and said he's not a good Kohen, that he can't be a Kohen anymore, we can't just override that ruling. So Rabbi Elazar Saval, he says, listen, we have to worry about the court and the respect for the court. And if we undo the court ruling, we're going to have a problem. People will start disrespecting the court. And therefore, once we say you're not a Kohen, the guy's not a Kohen anymore. Right? We're worried about this whole disrespecting the court. We put him in his job. We took him off his job. We're going to put him back into his job. In other words, we're the court. We can do what we want, right? We do not just what we want in terms of random. We see what the need, right? We based on the witnesses. We had two witnesses that said he wasn't a good Kohen, so we ruled based on that. Now we have new evidence. We redo it. We say, okay, you're back to being a Kohen. Because now, again, we're back to the original chazak of your father. Ulla and we're not worried about people disrespecting the court, right? It's almost, again, you could say it's not that we're not worried about it. It's that we think people would disrespect it if they know the court is ruling things that are against what we would think to be truth. Again, we don't really know the truth here because we have two different witnesses. But again, we go by the rules. The rules are there's a chazaka, right? The witnesses cancel each other out. We're left with the chazaka. Until proven otherwise, you're a good Kohen. So that's what we think the machloket is. We're still now, at this point, we have a machloket. Are we worried about Zilut Beitina or are we not? But we haven't found the Ashley Rav because Ashley Rav is plural. There's strong ropes for him to hold on. Well, you can hold on Rashbag, but that's the only one right now. Soon we're going to see that that's not the machloket. And that both Rabbi Elazar and Rashbag agree that there's no concern for Zilut Beitina, and that's going to answer our question. So Matkevla Rav Ashi comes and says, if your whole point was, can we undo or not undo the court, and that's the machloka between them, why do you have to come up with a crazy case? We still need a bit of a crazy case, but not as crazy. Why don't you just have two witnesses came and said he was a bad Kohen, and then two witnesses came and we ruled, and then two witnesses came and said he was a good Kohen, and then the court wanted to undo the ruling. You didn't need to have one before and one after. That's what it says. Why was the case one before, one after? Even if there were two, it would have been the same. Ella Amar Ravashi. So Ravashi said, Tekule Alma lo chashina leziluta de beidina. Ravashi says, actually, neither of them were worried about ziluta de beidina. As far as they were concerned, if two witnesses came and they ruled this guy's not a Kohen, and then two witnesses came and said he is a good Kohen, and we now knock out their testimony, go back to the original chazak of the father, everyone would agree we're going to make him a Kohen again. And we're not worried about what the people will say about the court. But what's the machloket? It's a totally different machloket. A machloket that the real sugya is in Sanhedrin, although it comes up in a lot of other sugyot and sugyot we've seen already in Kitin, in Ktubot, and further on in this Masechet. We'll see. The machloket is, and that's why it had to be one before, one after. Can you join together these two testimonies? Now, we're going to see there's two machlokot about joining testimonies. The first one is not our issue. The second one is. Let's read that. And it's based on this machloket. The machloket between Rabbi Elazar and Rashbag is the exact machloket that we see between Tanakama and Rabbi Natan. But first, we're going to see a different machloket for Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha and Tanakama. If some action happens, and we have witnesses for that action, we only accept two witnesses if they saw the action happen together. If they were in different places, or Bezer Chazer, we're going to see. Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha Omer afilu Bezer Chazer. Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha disagrees and says one could see it, and then one could see it after, as long as they testified about the same thing, then we accept their testimony. The second machloket is our machloket, which is we don't accept witnesses to testify in court as a group of witnesses. Remember, you need two witnesses for something, only if they testify together. We have no problem if one witness comes today, one witness comes tomorrow. It's not a problem. So if these two witnesses came on separate days, it shouldn't matter. They join together. According to Tanakama, they don't join together. So that's the machloket. Rabbi Elazar thinks you can't join them together, like Tanakama. Rashbag thinks, like Rabbi Natan, that you can join them together. And that's the machloket. But again, the main point is they're the Ashley Rav Rabbe, because they both think we're not worried about Ziluta de Beitina. We're just worried about the accepting these two witnesses that came separately. Now we're going to have a different case. We're going to have a different issue. Machloket, Rava and Rav Yosef. And we're going to see their machloket in two different situations, one regarding land, one regarding money. And then we're going to see someone who paskins, like one of them regarding land and like the other regarding money. That's going to take us till almost the end of the daf. Hauda Amar Lachavre. My bayit b'hai ara. Guy goes up to his friend, says, what are you doing on my land? Okay, so basically we have, let's go back to our Ruth and Naomi. Ruth is living on the land. Naomi says, Ruth, what are you doing on my land? Ruth comes out and says, listen, I bought it from you, and here's a document. That sounds pretty good. Turning now to Abaye. Naomi says to her, that is a forged document. Now, this was the actual situation that happened. And the Ruth character here, obviously wasn't Ruth, but whoever it was, whispers to Rava, who is the judge, and says, you know what? Naomi's right. It actually is a forged document, which is crazy. What, she brought a forged document into court, and now she's admitting it? Well, Ruth says, listen, I'll explain to you why I brought a forged document, because the truth is she really did sell it to me. I lost the document. So what did I say? Amina, I said to myself, at least I'll bring this in my hands and I'll have something to show. In other words, I am certain that this land is mine. I don't have a way to prove it. So I'll bring this forged document. Now, there's a big debate among the Rishonim. What was this forged document? Was it a totally forged document? That's a little crazy. Rashbam suggests, one of his explanations is this is a totally forged document. Yes. It just looked real. It was very well forged. Some people say that it was what's called a shtar amanah, which is amanah means we have trust. It's a document of trust, which means that before Naomi sold the land to Ruth, they were in negotiation and Naomi decided to sell it. So she made a document that said, I intend to sell this land to Ruth. It was like a document kind of committing her to the sale, even though the sale hadn't really happened yet. And it wasn't a document of sale, but it was close to it. And she had, it kind of looked like a document of sale, but it was before the actual sale, and it's not a valid document. It's just that she trusted Ruth that Ruth would never pull this out in court, and then Ruth did pull it out in court. So that makes it sound maybe a little more realistic, but we're going to go with this was really a forged document, and Ruth just comes forward and admits that it was forged. I'm a rabbi. So the question is, what do we do? Ruth is claiming that the land is hers, and she had a chazaka in the land and was living there. But she doesn't have a shtar to show for it, and the shtar she brought was really forged, and she claims she had one, she just lost it. And Naomi claims, what are you talking about? I never sold it to you. I'm a rabbi. The question is, do we believe Ruth? So Rabbi says yes, because she has a mali l'shakir. What's a mali l'shakir? If she wanted to lie, she would have had a better lie, because she had a forged document in her hand, which looked good. So Abaye, Amarle, Sharam Al-Yahu. So either it was really invalid, but she could have faked it, or it really was a valid document. It was just a Sharam Anal, which wasn't really able to be used in court, but it was a real document. But either which way, we're going to say she could have lied and said it was a good document, and Naomi would have to prove that it was a forgery, and she might not necessarily be able to prove it. And therefore, since Ruth came and admitted that she had forged the document, we actually believe her. Because if she really wanted to lie, she would have just said it was a good document. So, Amarle Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, what are you talking about? Abaye samach ta'hashtar. How on earth could you say there's a mali l'shaker when Ruth started with her whole claim was based on a forged document? Hashtar, the shtar that she was claiming was the basis of her case, was chasba ba'almahu. It was like a piece, like a shard of earthenware shard. It was nothing. It was meaningless. In other words, her claim, and the Rashbam basically explains it like this. The Rashbam says, mali l'shaker, we've seen this before, doesn't work when there's aiding, there's testimony working against you. Now, Ruth came forward and said, so you're believed if you could have given a better lie, but not if there are two witnesses going against your claim. Now, in this case, there aren't two witnesses going against Ruth's claim. However, Ruth's claim was, here's a document to prove it. And she then testified that it's not a valid document, that it's forgery. That's called a hoda'at baldin. That's her admission. The admission in court of one of the sides is like hoda'at baldin kimea edim dami. It's like 100 witnesses, which means that in the end, we're going to use this mali l'shakar argument, Rav Yosef says. How could you use a mali l'shakar argument when there's edim going against it? Because mali l'shakar is, why would she lie? So it must be she really has a shtar. But the shtar she claimed in the beginning was hers, she admits was forged. So there's edim saying it's a forged document, and she had nothing else to show other than that forged document. So Rav Yosef says there's no way we can trust her. Now we're going to have another case. Like I said, first that was land. Now we're going to have with money, with a loan. Okay, Naomi says to Ruth, give me the 100 zuzim that you owe me, and here's the shtar. Amarle. I should do it the reverse. Sorry. Let's do it with Ruth. Ruth says to Naomi, give me 100 zuz that you owe me, and here's the shtar. It shows that you owe me the money. Amarle shtar tayafu. So Naomi says, what are you talking about? That's a forged document. Gachin lachich l'rabba. Again, the same situation happened. And the Ruth whispers to Rabbah in shtar zayafa. Really is, you're right. It's a forged document. She's right, Naomi. But the truth is, I really had a real document. It's just it got lost. Vamina and they called you, and I said I'll just come to court with something. So I brought this forged document. A Rabbah, again, Rabbah's going to say the same thing. Malo l'shakir, if Ruth wanted, she could have lied and said it was a real document. The fact that she admitted that it was false means that we could believe her, because she could have just lied. And if she wanted, that would have been a better lie than to admit that she brought this forged document into court. So we believe her. Amarle, and then therefore what? Okay, let's just review now, because this is going to be important. In the first case, if Ruth was right, it means Ruth can stay in the land that she was living in, because she was claiming, I bought this land. In this case, Ruth can now collect money from Naomi. So Amarle Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says to Rabbah, same thing he said before. How could you rely on the shtar? It's just an earthenware shard. It's nothing. Can't rely on that. And same thing as the other case. Amar Rabbi Idi bar Avin. Here comes Rabbi Idi bar Avin, and he's going to paskin now. We're going to paskin like Rava in land. We're going to paskin like Rabbi Yosef in the money story situation. Hilchata ke Rava ba'ara. Why are we going to paskin like Rava when it comes to land? Because wherever the land is, we're going to leave it there. We're just not going to move anyone. So Ruth was living in the land. Ruth stays in the land, and that's based on we trust her. Mali the Shakir. That's Rava. But Hilchate Kavatei de Rabbi Yosef Bezuzah. I hope you caught up on this when I was telling you the differences. If Ruth is right in the second case, like Rava says, that means she's going to be able to collect a loan from Naomi. Now, what does he say here? That's what we're going to pass in that case, like Rabbi Yosef, and not trust Ruth. Why? Wherever the money is, which is in the hand of the borrower now, no one's going to have to take money out of pocket. And that's Rabbi Idi bar Avin's point. We have this principle now. Two ways to understand this, or maybe even more, but we're going to go with Rashi and the Ri and Tosfot. I'm sorry, Rashbam and the Ri and Tosfot. We have two basic approaches here. So the main point is that we're going to just keep the money where it is. So sometimes it might be because we're holding like Rava. Sometimes it might be we're holding like Rabbi Yosef. It depends. If it's land, then it means the land was the original, the person who was in the land is the one who brought the document to prove, and they're the ones with the fake document. So we're going to hold by Rava and trust them. In the case with the money, it's going to be the lender has the document in hand. They're the ones who lied, but it's the other person who basically is going to get to keep their money and not move money from one hand to the other. So the Rashbam says the reason why we say this is because the reason why Rabbi Idi bar Avin paskin this way is because he wasn't sure who to rule by. So misafek, right? We're not sure, you're in doubt. So just keep the money where it is. The Ri says, no, it's not out of doubt. It's out of principle. It's that we rule that we keep the money where it is because, and he claims, and this is something we see in the other Tosfot team here, that amigo, which is basically, right, Mali the Shakir and amigo are similar. The question if it's the exact same thing or not, I'm not going to get into this for our class today. But amigo, according to the fact, right, amigo is mito, from the fact that you could have said a better argument and you didn't, we trust you. That only works to keep money where it is. It never works to take money out of someone else's property. And that's why we hold this way, out of principle, not out of, we don't know what to do, so let's just leave the money where it is. So those are two different approaches as to why you paskin this way. Okay, now we're going to have a story. Ha'u Arva, there was another, this is our third story, but this story is going to involve Rabbi Idi bar Avin, and there's something a little strange about it, you'll see. Ha'u Arva, there was an Abaye, a guarantor, guaranteed the loan. The Amar Leila Love, he said to the buyer who borrowed money from, there was a guy, so let's say Ruth borrowed money from Naomi, and now Ruth didn't pay back the money. So Yael came, or David, let's go with a man. David came and paid the money back to Naomi. David now goes to Ruth and says, hey, give me the money back, right? I paid back your loan, but you owe me the money. So Havli me'azuze de parate l'malvei laveh. Go give me 100 zuz that I paid Naomi back on your behalf. The hashtar, and here's the star. Okay, what star it is, debate, we'll go with, he took the IOU from Naomi, that Ruth owed Naomi money, and he brings it to Ruth and says, you now owe me this money. Amarle, lav paraticha. Says, didn't I pay you back already, Ruth says to David? I was sure I paid you back this loan. You're coming at me with a document that we already dealt with. Amar, lav hadar shakel minai. David says, yeah, you're right. You did pay me back this money, but didn't you take out immediately another loan for the same amount of money? Shalcha Rabbi Idi bar Avin l'kamed Abaye. So Rabbi Idi bar Avin doesn't know what to do in this case, sends it to Abaye. Ki agav namai, what would you do in this case? Shalach le Abaye. Abaye says, Maiti baile. Why are you asking me? You're the guy. You're the one paskin on this issue. Hi, iu de amar hilchata kavatei de Rabba ba'ara hilchata kavatei de Rav Yosef bezuze dehecha de ume zuze lukme. You're the one who said when you're not sure what to do. Right now, again, what happened? It's the same idea. David pulled out a document that was a false document. It wasn't on this loan. Claimed it was on this loan, and then said, "Oh, well, it's on some other money you owe me." Now that's not legit. So again, maybe we believe him because he could have said, no, you never paid me back. And he would have been believed because he had a document in hand. So if you're Rabba, you'll say Mali l'shaker. If you're Rav Yosef, you'll say, no, we don't hold that in this case because David himself admitted that it wasn't the case. And the star is nothing. The star is meaningless. So it's just a forgery, basically, because it's an invalid star at this point. It's been paid back. So we would now, where's the money? The money's in Ruth's hand. So basically, we should rule like Rav Yosef. David has no rights to collect this because we're not moving money for property. So basically, Abaye says, you know the answer to your question. Why are you asking me? Just kind of, that's what I said. It's going to be strange about this. Again, we don't really end up with an answer for that. But it seems, yes, he would say this. Now the Gemara comes and says, and qualifies this ruling though. It's only though if the details are like this, where when David went to Ruth and Ruth said, I paid you back, David said, oh yeah, but I lent you money again. And that invalidated the shtar right then and there. But but if David said, it's true you gave me back the money, but I gave it right back to you because the money was bad money that you gave me. It was rubbed off, the coins, or they were reddened by, like rot, and it was bad. And I knew I wouldn't sell them. No one would take that money from me. So I gave them right back to you. And then the loan document is still in place according to that. The shibud, the lien of this document is still in place. And then David would be able to get his money back based on this. And that would be a whole different story. End of the daf. We'll just start this today. People were talking about him, that he was living in orphan's land and eating the produce, benefiting from the produce. Abaye said, Abaye says to him, listen, I want to understand what's going on here. Like, explain to me. It's a little bit strange that you're in the orphan's property and eating the produce. It doesn't sound right. Tell me what the details are. So we're only going to see the very first part today, and we'll continue with the story tomorrow. He says, well, I got this land, this collateral from the fathers of the orphans. Okay, now what kind of collateral? Mashkanta de Surah. If you remember, this means that what it meant is the kind of collateral that the person who takes the collateral, because he's owed money by them, can start using the produce and deduct the amount until basically they get to zero, and then they're supposed to return the land. So that's the first part for today. We'll see tomorrow what happened in the story and where things progressed from there. So quick review of our daf. We started with the machloket between Rabbi Elazar and Rashbag and what exactly is the debate. We had two different options. So we got to the second one, which basically proved to us that they both hold that we are like Rav Nachman, as Rav Nachman relied on these two Tanaim to basically say that we're not worried about the zilzul of the court, and that we prove from the case of the Kohanim and the Chazaka and the different witnesses that came along, and their machloket is all about some other issue about two witnesses coming separate. Do we accept them as one or do we not? Can we combine their testimony to say they're two witnesses or not? Then we had these two cases, one with money, one with land. Do we hold a mali l'shakir or not when somebody admits that their document was actually forgery? So do we say, well, they had a better argument, they could have just said it was a good document or not? And that was what we saw the debate. And then we have Rabbi Idi Bar Avid, who basically rules that we're going to leave the money wherever it is. So if it's land, we're going to paskin like Rabba. If it's money, we're going to paskin like Rabbi Yosef. And then we saw a case where he didn't know how to paskin, and then Rabbi says, come on, you're the guy who says we leave the money where it is. And therefore this Arev couldn't get his money back that he was trying to claim, right? This guarantor. And then we started with Rav Sharsh, and we'll start back with that in tomorrow's class. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov.